Washing brushes is probably my least favorite thing to do, but it's also the most important thing to do to ensure good skin hygiene and also to ensure that your makeup application stays true. And this video was inspired by a comment made on my last video by user Kathy Weiner 6392. So thank you so much for posting that comment, and I hope this helps you out. Okay, so before we begin, here are some things that you'll need. You'll need a cleanser of your choice, your dirty tools that you want to wash, and then you'll need 2 towels. And here are 2 optional things that you can use. One would be a brush cleansing mat. So this one has a handle on the back. I don't recommend the ones with the suction cups because they, for whatever reason, they don't actually stick to the sink. And I find that the handle, such as this, is much nicer. I got this off of Yes Style for under $8. Not affiliated with them, but I will provide a link down below for the exact same one if you're shopping around for a brush cleansing mat. And then the next optional thing will be a vinyl glove. Normally I would have 2, but I'm just down to my last one. If you have dry skin and you don't want your hands to be in water, because they will be for a while, you can use a vinyl glove to help prevent dryness. All right, let's get started. Okay, so my first step is to wet the bristles, and then we're going to add a small bit of cleanser. Just about that much. It really depends on the size of your brush, but I'm gonna start off with that much and see if I need more along the way. So with this wet brush and some soap, I'm going to work the cleanser into the bristles, and immediately you'll see some of that foundation, powder, makeup coming out. And you don't see much of a lather just because there's a lot of oils and product that's still in the bristles. I'm gonna turn on the water again and rinse this out and then wash it one more time. Okay, and we're gonna do it again. And what I'm looking for is the soap coming out of the bristles to be colorless. So this second time around, I'm seeing a lot more bubbles and less color. So that usually means most of the product, if not all, has been removed from the bristles. So that's what it's looking like right now. And I'm squeezing the excess water out. And then one last final test that I like to do just to make sure that all the soap is out is that I like to work the bristles against my hand. And if I see any soap buildup around here, or if there's like a permanent wet patch or a clumping of the bristles in the middle somewhere, then that means that there's still lingering soap in the brush. But this looks like it's thoroughly rinsed out. I'm not seeing any lather in there, and when I squeeze it, I'm not hearing any bubbles popping. So that's good. We're gonna leave this brush off to the side, just like that, and then we're going to work on the rest of the brushes. Just a few things to mention. The denser the brush, like this foundation brush here, the more times that you'll have to rinse it out and lather with soap, just because it's harder to get in between the fibers because they're so densely packed. But for brushes such as this, where the density is quite low, you can get away with using 1 pump of cleanser and 1 rinse. And then of course, when you're squeezing the bristles to get the water out of the brushes, you don't want to pull up just because there is adhesive in here that gets weakened when wet. Just squeeze and then let go. Also, I'm not a huge fan of filling the sink up with water and just leaving the brushes in there because again, it weakens the glue that's in the brush. I just like to get them wet, leave it off to the side, and keep things draining while I work. Okay, so now that my larger brushes have been washed, I'll show you how to dry them. Grab a brush and whip the water out of the bristles. And what I'm doing is I'm tapping the brush literally into the towel so that I'm flicking the water that's hidden in here out to the end. This process can get messy, so make sure that you wear something that you don't mind getting messy. And then once I feel like most of the water is out, I'm just going to gently fluff up the brush. I'm not putting any pressure on this part of the bristles just because I don't want to like smash it down, but I am trying to fluff up that part by rubbing it into the towel. So there we go. We have one fully cleaned, almost dry brush. And just drying overnight will get rid of all of that moisture. So yeah, there you have it. You have one clean brush. We're gonna move that off to the side here, and we're gonna work on the rest of the brushes, and then I'll show you how I dry them overnight, because there is a specific way to do that. Now I'm just turning my towel because the other side is getting pretty damp. And then with these denser brushes, just take your time flicking the water out of them. So now that the big brushes are freshly cleaned, they just need to be dried overnight. So I'll show you what I do to make sure that they dry properly. Okay, so what I have here is a towel that I just rolled one side of so that I have this hump to work with and also some extra overlay. I'm going to arrange my brushes with the bristles facing down so that gravity can help me and pull the extra water away from this area where the adhesive is. And then that way it'll ensure that the brushes dry properly and I keep their integrity for the entirety of the brush's lifespan. And then I'll set this up in an area that's well ventilated and preferably dust-free. As long as they have air circulation, that's pretty much it. All right, so now that we got the big brushes out of the way, let's tackle some of the smaller brushes. These are all of my smaller brushes, mainly eyeshadow brushes, eyeliner brushes. I have a beauty blender in here and then also my tweezers that I frequently use. Now there is quite a bit of them, so what I like to do is I kind of like to pick out the larger brushes. So that's what I'll do. So it's pretty much the same set of steps. I'm going to wet the bristles, wash them with a bit of soap using this tool here, and I'm going to rinse them, squeeze them, and then I'll show you how to tackle drying for some of the unique shapes. Like most of these are like fluffy brushes, but for a paddle brush such as this, where it's like thin, there is a specific way to dry these. For smaller brushes, they don't require a lot of soap. So what I've done is I've pumped some on the corner of my mat here, and I'm only using just the tiniest bit that I'll need to work a decent lather. And then at this stage, I'll stop. And then I'll grab another brush and then I'll just go down the line. Basically what I want to do is I want to apply and scrub the soap into the bristles and then rinse them all at the same time just to conserve water. Okay, so now that all the brushes have been lathered with soap, I'm going to rinse this off, and then I'm going to rinse all of these brushes as well. I've rinsed all of my brushes, but I left this one here. I noticed that there is a bit of concealer left on one side, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that one more time. And this concealer brush is a little bit more dense than the other ones, so I'm not surprised that I have to go in and cleanse it again, but that's not an issue as long as I get the brush clean. And that seems to be much cleaner. So just one last final rinse. And then try to squeeze out as much of the water possible. We're gonna set the brushes off to the side, and then we're gonna bring in the towel again. Same thing. We're just gonna beat the brush onto the towel just to flick that water out. And then I'm going to gently use tiny circular motions to fluff up the bristles. I have a brush right here that seems to be dry, but when I squeeze on it, I can hear suds, so hopefully you can hear this. And then when I rub the brush, it's starting to clump. So that means the soap hasn't been fully rinsed out, so I'm just gonna go ahead and rinse this quickly and then dry it again. Now that I rinsed it and fluffed it up on a towel, the bristles aren't clumping together and it looks fluffy. I'm going to dry them on that towel at an angle for the water to drain out overnight. Okay, so let's start washing some of the other brushes. I want to go ahead and tackle some of the ones with interesting shapes. So I have some paddle brushes, an angled brush, this tinier paddle brush, a lash comb, this brow lamination tool. Oh yeah, let's do the super tiny one too. Let's start off with the paddle shaped ones first. So for these, I prefer washing them like this and drying them like this, just to preserve the shape of the paddle. Okay, I'm gonna grab a little bit of soap and I'm going to just go back and forth like this. And then if you have eyeshadow in this area, what you can do is grab a little bit of extra soap and just wash the handle part. Okay, let's move on to this lash comb and this eyebrow lamination tool first, because I like using them both at the same time, because I can use this spoolie tool to get in between the lash comb and then whatever hard to get stuck on makeup, I can use this part of the brush to kind of scrape it off. But let's see how much the cleanser does first. That's how you get these two tools cleaned. Now we're gonna move on to some of the more interesting shaped brushes. So I have a flat angled brush here. I have a lipstick brush right here. And then I also have this ultra tiny angled brush right here. We're gonna start off with the lipstick brush. Now the product on here is lipstick, which is often waxy and a little bit difficult to remove. So what I've done here is I've added just a tiny bit of water, and I am using my leftover unused soap, and I'm going to use both to work a lather. And the water just helps to dilute the soap to really get it into the fibers. And luckily with these smaller brushes, they don't hold a lot of soap to begin with. So rinsing them is really quick and easy. And there's usually never any soap residue left over after a thorough rinse. Okay, now let's move on to that angled brush. I got the larger one. So again, because this is densely packed, I'm just gonna go back into that water to loosen up the soap. And I'm just gonna use the rest of the soap to help work it into a lather. And because my cleaning tool mat was getting kind of gross, I just rinsed everything off, and I'm just gonna add more soap. So we're gonna tackle this super teeny tiny angled brush. Just gonna grab the slightest bit of soap, and I'm just gonna work it over the bumps. This is my brush for eyeliner, so it's gonna have a lot of dark pigment coming out of it. But because it's so small, it's not going to hold a lot of that product, and it's going to rinse clean fairly quickly. So when I'm rinsing these small flat brushes, when I'm holding it over the water, I'm separating the bristles like so, just so that I can get the water in all the way to the bristles. And that's a clean, super tiny angled brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and dry these. So starting off with the paddle brushes, I'm just going to work the bristles from side to side, pressing the fibers into the towel. And then if the handle is wet, I'm just gonna roll it over the towel. And for these combs, obviously the bristles here aren't very pliable, so I'm just pressing it into the towel, and that's pretty much it. And if they look a little misshapen, I like to go in and just manipulate it with my fingers so that they dry in their proper shape. Let's switch things up, and I'll show you how to wash the beauty blender and then the tweezers, and then I'm just going to speed through all of these. So with sponges, it's pretty much the same set of steps as the brush. You want to get the sponge saturated with water, and then you want to get a cleanser, and what you want to do is squeeze the cleanser into the sponge, and it's okay if all the water comes out. What I'm looking for here is the foundation color to come out of the sponge. And once I'm squeezing the sponge and nothing comes out of it, I'm then going to rinse. So flood the sponge with water so it's absorbed as much water as possible, and then squeeze it. And then at the end of your squeeze, if you're still seeing soapy bubbles, you'll need to go ahead and rinse it again. So sometimes when you've been using a beauty blender or like a makeup sponge for a long time, it will stain over time. So as long as you're lathering up the sponge, rinsing it under water, and the bubbles are rinsing out clear, like there's no pigment in it, then you know that the sponge is clean. So don't be fooled by the stains. Just make sure that the water coming out of the sponge is clear. After you've cleaned them, you can rest them on a towel like that, and just let it air dry until it shrinks back to its original size. For tweezers, pretty simple. You want to get it wet and just use your fingers to gently wipe the blades. And then of course the handle. And just make sure that there's no longer gunk kind of like in where it pinches. So that's clean. And then of course you can just dry this by running a towel over it. Okay, so I have all of these guys to do, so I'm just gonna speed through them and just get them washed and rinsed as quickly as possible. And finally, we're done. And there you have it. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope it inspired you to clean your makeup brushes if you've been putting it off for a while. If you have any video suggestions for future videos, or if you would like me to talk about a certain product, please let me know in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to make it happen. Have a great day wherever you are. Bye.